So you're welcome to stand or you're welcome to sit. Both can be practiced in both ways. I'm going to demonstrate from standing. And I'm going to invite you to have your feet connected to the earth and the ground. So you feel your soles of your feet, the middle part of your feet, the ball of your feet connected to the earth. And then if you're standing, you might lean a little bit to the left and the right. If you're sitting, you might just move the soles of your feet to the left and the right. So you can feel the outer edges. And so then you can connect to the center. So you can feel like what it's like to be contrasting with feeling a little bit off to feeling centered and connected to the ground. And you might wiggle your toes, your feet, and feel solidly connected to the earth, knowing that we're on unceded territory. So I'm coming from Los Angeles or Monterey Park. So I'm on the unceded territory of the Tongvan people. So acknowledge what unceded territory you're on with your feet connected to the earth. You're gonna have your palms facing up, and I'm having them a little higher so you can see it. You might start around your hips and then just lift your hands and then flip them over like pancakes and then have your hands come down. And we're inhaling as our hands come up, exhaling as our hands come down. You can go at your own pace. What sort of length of breath feels comfortable for you. But we're connecting to our breath and our moving body, allowing ourselves to fully arrive in the present moment and into our breathing bodies. You might have the movement come from your feet and your body's lifting, and then your hands go up. And then as your hands go down, your body starts to move closer to the earth. So it's really this invitation for connectedness. You, with your inhale and exhale connecting, you with the earth, ourselves to each other, as we inhale through our nose and exhale through our mouth. We might be connecting with our ancestors. My papa from Chinatown. We might be connecting with the range of feelings that come up, of anticipation, of hope. So this movement is a way to think about or experience connectedness of inhales and exhales, of internal and external. Now I invite you to play with this movement. So maybe going up and down is not your jam or not what you're interested in. You could try directions. You could try diagonal. And you're working within your range of motion. You might go higher. You might even go smaller. So what are you drawn to in terms of the inhale and the exhale? For some in the class that I teach, people really like to go sideways, sort of like they're playing the accordion. It's the movements that helps you connect to your inhale and your exhale. Take 2 more breaths together, playing with the movement. And when you're ready, you can wiggle your shoulders, you can wiggle your fingers, your feet. We'll invite you to have your left foot in front of your right. If you're standing, sort of like in your slight lunge. If you're sitting, you can just face forward. You have your hands and you're just going to push directly in front of you and then pull back in. So push, exhale, pull, inhale. And I'm going to show you from the side. Push, pull, exhale, and inhale. And you're staying in balance, but you might be a little bit forward, and then you stay in balance and come back a little bit. If you're in your chair, you're just rocking forward and you're rocking back while still staying balanced. And in this movement, we're sending out compassion and we're receiving care. And if you're just joining us, you can just jump on in as you feel comfortable. We're just pushing directly in front of us with our shoulders facing forward, and we're pulling back. And we're sending compassion, and then we're receiving care and compassion. And this is another form to think about connectedness, the ways in which we are all connected. Sending out care to those who are suffering, receiving care for the parts of us that could use some care. Or we're sending out connectedness to ancestors and community, and we're receiving care from ancestors and community. Exhaling through your mouth as you're pushing out, inhaling through your nose as you're pulling in. And it's interesting because we're both grounded, we're balanced, but we're still moving. It's an interesting metaphor for social movements, for thinking about change, that we know who we are, we're grounded and clear, but we're also stretching and changing for more equity. So exhaling as our hands go out, inhaling as our hands come in. If you're just coming into the call, feel free to join us. We're just pushing our hands out, exhaling, sending compassion, pulling in, and receiving care. And we're doing this from standing or sitting or lying down, just to be fully accessible through a disability justice lens, allowing us to fully arrive into our breathing body, into our groundedness and movement. So we're exhaling as we're pushing, inhaling as we're pulling in. Let's take 2 more breaths. So when you're ready, you can wiggle your fingers, shake out your feet, shoulders. So we did the elevator or the chi up and down. We just did the chi, push and pull. And then we're going to do a third movement in this prelude as we begin the vigil very shortly, in about 4 or 5 minutes. So if you're just joining us, you're welcome to stand or you're welcome to sit. And we're practicing Qigong. Qi is the energy, life force. Gong is sort of exercise and work, but this idea of continually developing and connecting our Qi. And Qi is a great metaphor for thinking about social justice and social movements in the ways that we're all interconnected. Can't think of one without the other. So what we're going to do now, and please work within your range of motion, what your body is inviting you to do and allowing you to do. What we're going to do is we're going to have our hands and we're going to reach down towards the earth and then pull up and have our palms facing the top of our head and let our hands float down. And you can do this from sitting or standing, but you're connecting the earth to the sky, to all beings. And as you pull down and connect to the earth, you inhale as your hands come up, exhaling as your palms come down. To the earth, to the sky, as your hands come down. Inhaling as you're lifting, exhaling as your hands float down like feathers. And as thoughts and questions and judgments come up, just notice them. Be invited to say, I'm going to approach this with equanimity, or this is this. But keep the motion, keep the connectedness. So as we hear different voices today, think about your breath, think about connectedness, inhaling and exhaling, connectedness to our bodies, to each other, connectedness with our ancestors, to us and other communities and their ancestors. Inhaling, connecting earth, sky, to all beings. Let's take 3 more breaths. If you're joining us now, you're welcome to just jump in, either sitting or standing. We're just reaching down to the earth. Our palms are up as we lift our hands. Have our hands go to our head and let our hands fall in front of us. Let's take 2 more breaths. Exhale. Connect to the earth, the sky, and let your hands fall on all beings. So may all beings do no harm and be free from harm. Wiggle your shoulders, wiggle your fingers. So thank you for that opening practice with us. I'm Kathy Yap. I'm a professor of Asian American Studies at the Claremont Colleges and the granddaughter of Marie Lee and Gim Yap, who are undocumented folks that were detained in Angel Island in the early part of the 20th century and taught me about the use of community and body all intertwined to create empowerment. So it's been a huge honor to be with you today. So thank you so much for practicing, and I will now turn it to Reverend Deborah Lee.
Thank you so much, Professor Kathy Yep. I want to welcome everyone to our vigil today. I want to welcome those of you who are here for the first time and those of you who have been coming for a long time. If you'd like, I'd like to invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. If you'd like to share your name and your congregation or affiliation and or organization that you're here on behalf of or representing, we'd just love to see who's here as a way to introduce ourselves to one another. So on behalf of the Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity, I want to welcome all of you. We believe that every person is sacred across bars and borders. And we do that through a number of programs, including faith-rooted organizing and accompaniment programs that focus on campaigns that address immigration justice and ending mass incarceration. This vigil, the Compassion Has No Walls vigil, is one of our programs that brings together people of diverse faiths, cultural backgrounds to spiritually gather in prayer, to nourish, learn from one another, and to support families impacted by harmful policies, and to come together in public witness. The vigil space is led each month by different partnering congregations or organizations that help bring a different light to the range of issues around immigration justice and ending mass criminalization. So this month, I want to really thank our hosts, the Presbyterian Church in Chinatown, Chinese for Affirmative Action, and Chinese Medicine and Magic, and you'll be hearing from all of them in a few minutes. This vigil began in the spring of 2011. In response to our country's growing detention and deportation immigration policy. We first gathered at the West County Detention Facility in Richmond for 8 years, once a month, until the immigration detention contract was ended in 2018. Beginning in 2019, we began gathering at the Federal Immigration Building at 630 Sansom Street in San Francisco. Some of you have been there with us before. We moved to this online vigil, hopefully temporarily. This building has particular historical significance. This is an image of the building. It has particular historical significance for the Chinese American experience in the Bay Area, as the 10th through the 16th upper floors of the building were used for immigration detention after the closure of Angel Island Detention Center. In the past few months, we have heard of hunger strikes after hunger strikes of detainees in immigration detention, protesting the unsafe and dangerous conditions they face in the midst of COVID-19, while their detention is needless and unnecessary. Last month, we gathered outside this very 630 Sansom building for a public memorial and outcry for justice at the death of Chong Ung-an, age 74, who died of suicide while detained in the Mesa Verde Detention Center in May, an act of desperation and hopelessness, or protest after being denied release 3 times. Today, I'd like to call up the memory of a Chinese woman named Leung Bik Ha, age 32, a mother who 72 years ago, in September 1948, committed suicide in the 630 Sansom Street building. She had already undergone a thorough examination in China with all of her paperwork, approving her to immigrate to the United States. She'd waited for months to be able to join her husband, who was a Chinese American World War II sergeant in the US Army. After finally arriving by boat to San Francisco, instead of being able to join her family, she was immediately detained in this building, separated from her son, and after months of detention, threatened with deportation. After her death, 114 detained Chinese immigrant women in this building went on hunger strike in protest of immigration policies and detention. Today, this building still stands as part of the bureaucracy of the largest immigration detention system in the world. It still holds temporary holding cells for captives, courtrooms of intensive interrogation, and it is a place where people are taken away by authorities from their loved ones. So today we come together in this vigil to honor the memory of Leung Bik Ha, Chong Ung-an, and many others who suffer from this impact of institutional racism, exclusion, and xenophobia. But we gather ever hopeful with a vision of a future where the sacredness and integrity of all people is honored. So thank you for joining with us today. And I'll turn it over to Rebecca from Chinese Medicine and Magic for an opening prayer.
Thank you. Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Rebecca Seetong Olstad, and I wanted to start with a land acknowledgement. Thank you so much, Kathy. If you were here a little bit earlier, she led us in a beautiful Qigong practice, including acknowledging the land that we're on. And I am calling today from Huichin Ohlone territory, also known as Oakland, California. A small group of us went to the ice building that Reverend Deborah Lee was just speaking about, and we offered this altar there. That building is in Ramaytush Ohlone lands. And I want to speak a little bit about why it's important for me to make a land acknowledgement. As we say these prayers, as we talk about our healing as Chinese American people and the many people of different backgrounds on this call, as we talk about resilience, as we talk about solidarity, it's really important for me that we acknowledge where we are in the land that has been taken, that has not been ceded, and the genocide that has happened on these lands. So a land acknowledgement for me is about acknowledging that history, and it's also about praying for the well-being, the visions, the health of current day Indigenous peoples. So particularly to where I encourage folks to support Sogorea Land Trust, to pay the Shumi land tax, and to be thinking wherever you are, if you are not Indigenous to the lands that you are living on, who are the first peoples of that land? How can you support them? So I offer that acknowledgement, and I'm going to put a link into the Shumi land tax. And I also actually want to say too, that thinking about watersheds and how we're connected, me here living in Huichin Ohlone territory, I'm also connected through the waters to Winnemem Wintu territory up near Mount Shasta. And they are praying for their salmon to return. And there's a lot of efforts and a lot of ways you can be involved. So I also encourage you to check out runforsalmon.org, and I'll put that in the chat. So I offer that acknowledgement, that thanks, and pray for the health and the well-being of Ohlone people and all Indigenous peoples. I also want to offer a calling in of our ancestors. As a Chinese American woman, I want to honor what my ancestors have been through. I want to be in relationship with them and reciprocity with them. And so for this call, as we talk about resilience, healing, solidarity, I want to call in our ancestors who are well, who can help us, who can support us, who can guide us, those that we can look up to really provide us guidance and assistance in this time. So I'm going to be lighting a little bit of cedar. Cedar is a tree that grows in many places of the world. It is a traditional tree that we worked with as Chinese people. So I'll be lighting a little bit of that to call in the presence of the ancestors. I'll also be lighting a stick of incense. Again, this is in honor of our ancestors, calling them in, remembering them, honoring them, and asking for guidance. And I'll go ahead and pass it back to you, Deb.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Reverend Norman Fong, Presbyterian minister and longtime activist in the Chinatown, San Francisco Chinatown community, and musical legend as well.
Well, I'd like to start off with a song that most of you should know if you're part of the Asian American movement in the 70s. It's called We Are the Children. But I also want to dedicate it to my father, who had to suffer Angel Island. He was in prison there. He came as a migrant worker, then ended up working in all the Chinatown restaurants and janitors and all that. And so remember your parents, your ancestors, and their struggle. And it's global, because in the litany that Susie and I will be doing from the Presbyterian Church, there's a lot of context in every line. I mean, China was divided up by extraterritorial rights. Everyone wanted to claim a piece of China. Opium was introduced there, and then Chinatown got famous for those opium dens where my grandma grew up in Ross Alley. So there's a lot of history here. Think of your family, think of our history, and connect all the dots, from the borders to Black Lives Matter in the jails, to Chinatown segregation, Chinese exclusion. Let's put it all together. Thank you, Pastor Deb, for having this global perspective. All right, so here we go. I'll make it short. The song is We Are the Children. We are the children of the migrant worker. We are the offspring of the concentration camps, sons and daughters of the railroad builders, and we will leave our stamp on America. One verse is good enough. Can I get an amen? We remember our ancestors who fled desperate conditions in a China weakened by foreign extraterritorial rights and trade sanctions.
We remember their resilience in the face of discrimination and racism.
Who came looking for a better life, coming to Gold Mountain, providing a stream of labor to fuel the industries and profits of American capitalists.
We remember their resilience in the face of discrimination and racism.
Excluded and driven out from mining by European miners, relegated to the menial jobs in mining towns, laundry workers, dishwashers.
We remember their resilience in the face of discrimination and racism.
Hired at half wage by the railroad barons working the dangerous explosion jobs, excluded from the historic annals and photos at the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad, driven out and burned out of California towns as anti-Chinese tensions turned into legislation, the Chinese Exclusion Act, barring Chinese as a racial group from immigrating to the US.
We remember their resilience in the face of discrimination and racism,
whose contributions to agricultural cultivation and industrial innovations and development were never acknowledged, even as those methods were making profits for white business interests and owners.
We remember their resilience in the face of discrimination and racism.
We remember our forebears, fathers, grandfathers, and mothers who took advantage of the post-1906 earthquake destruction of birth records that allowed for false papers to document entry as paper sons, and those who were detained at Angel Island facing hostile, filthy, and overcrowded conditions and harsh interrogations for months and even years before being allowed entrance or deported, whose families, wives, and children were kept in China due to discriminatory immigration regulations that prohibited the reunification of families.
We remember their resilience in the face of discrimination and racism,
who were aided in their situations by men and women of faith, by visitation during detention, and in Chinatown by publishing the Chinese language paper, by establishing medical clinics, because my dad couldn't get into any hospital, by providing legal services, and by teaching English language classes.
We honor and remember those who stand in solidarity with the oppressed.
We stand in solidarity today with those who are and have been facing racial and class discrimination, who are ostracized and degraded for their religion, cultural practices, language, dress, or appearance. Those who continue to face discrimination and participation in public education, housing, and employment.
We honor and strive for unity and solidarity with sisters and brothers who stand up and speak out for the rights of all people to seek freedom, asylum, and justice.
We reject the myth of the Asian American model minority, which sets people of color against one another, which denies our diversity and our experiences.
We honor and strive for unity and solidarity with sisters and brothers who stand up and speak out for the rights of all peoples to seek freedom, asylum, and justice.
Amen.
My name is Reverend Donald P. Hammond, and I am the interim minister for the English language worshiping community of the Presbyterian Church in Chinatown. I speak today as a servant of PCC, and while I cannot give you my witness, since I am not Chinese American, in the ancient traditions of my faith, I am here to bear witness to the resilience and solidarity of this community that has worked for justice and the liberation of Chinese immigrants for over 165 years. Our church, the oldest Asian American church in North America, we are grateful to be co-hosting the Vigil today in this interfaith witness. The Presbyterian Church of the United States of America, of which our church is part, has issued several statements condemning the current inhumane practices of the federal government with regard to immigration issues, family separations, and detentions within ICE facilities around the country. Through the lens of our Christian faith and in light of the gospel of Jesus Christ, we call for all to work for just and humane policies for all immigrant communities, grounded in the principles of family unity, human dignity, and rights for all. The PCUSA calls upon the federal government to immediately end newly implemented zero-tolerance policies that are tearing families apart. The PCUSA calls upon the federal government to reunite parents and children that have been separated as soon as possible under the care of the community, not in family detention, but instead ensuring access to family help and to attorneys for those in detention. The PCUSA calls upon the federal government to make certain that every parent in custody knows the location of their children and to facilitate regular communications between parents and their children until they are reunited. We call upon the federal government not to use possible reunification with children to force immigrant parents into concession to plead guilty to crimes in exchange for reuniting with their children. There are a host of other statements that our denomination has made. We at the Presbyterian Church in Chinatown are dedicated to serving the Chinese immigrant and Chinese American communities, and in fact, to serving all people as we live to understand Christ's command to love God by loving our neighbors. We are dedicated to living the biblical commandment to do justice, to love kindness, and to share our humble witness of God. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting Chinese for Affirmative Action, CAA, and having me today here at the Vigil. Joining here some of actually my CAA coworkers, Annette, Eva, and Crystal, if I incur, not missing anyone else. My name is Jose Ng, Immigrant Rights Program Manager at CAA. For those who haven't heard about CAA and our work, CAA is a community-based organization rooted in San Francisco's Chinatown. We advocate for an immigration system that reflects values of inclusion, compassion, and justice, and that ensures everyone, including students, families, workers, can live without fears and achieve their fullest potential. Throughout Asian American or Chinese Americans' history, you will find Chinese American community has a unique role to speak out against racism and injustice and to tell the stories of the racist immigration history and policy of the United States. As part of the Asian American and Chinese American community, we knew that Chinese was the first single ethnic group that was singled out and barred from entering the country, the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. From the Chinese Exclusion Act to more recent COVID-19 related racial motivated hatred against Asian and Chinese American community, we are called to stand up against any kind of racist, anti-immigrant, xenophobic immigration policies and regulation, which is pushed by the Trump administration. Be that be Muslim ban, threatening to deport international students in the midst of a pandemic, and drastically limited asylum seekers' ability to seek sanctuary in the United States. We stand in solidarity with all immigrants and believe in a world where everyone will thrive with dignity.
Hi, all. Again, my name is Rebecca Seetong Olstad. I go by Becca. And I'd like to tell you all a little bit about this Chinese medicine and magic group. It's a very grassroots, informal gathering of people for people who identify as being part of the Chinese diaspora based in the San Francisco Bay Area. And myself and a few other friends created this group because we wanted that community. We wanted to explore what is medicine for us as Chinese people. And this idea of medicine can really take so many forms. Some of us in the group are acupuncturists, and they've taught us how to use moxa and how to take care of our bodies, our minds, our spirits. Sometimes medicine is getting together and farming, putting our hands in the earth, growing plants together. Sometimes that medicine looks like being in circles and talking about our experiences as Chinese people, because we found that we have a lot to heal from, a lot to share, and sometimes we feel silent. So that gift of being with each other and speaking out loud is medicine. So medicine is really a broad concept of of ways that we can connect deeply with each other, connect deeply with ourselves. And one of the ways that medicine shows up for us as well is through solidarity, through action. You know, with our healing, I think for a lot of us, there's an impetus to know what to do with it, right? How do we want to show up in the world? How do we want to support other communities? So that's part of why I accepted the invitation to be a part of this, because healing and solidarity are hand in hand for many of us. And within our group, you know, sort of by nature, we are an interfaith group. People have different traditions, different beliefs, religions, or no religious affiliations. There are some things that I think a lot of us share in common, which really is a respect for the land and a desire to know where we are, to be in context, to be in reciprocity, including with the indigenous peoples of the lands we're on, and to grow our relationship with land, to learn from ecosystems, from plants, from animals. And then I'd say another common value for us is being in relationship with our ancestors, knowing that as Chinese people, we have a really long tradition of honoring who's come before us and who might come after us. You know, and what does that mean for us as people? How does that allow us to show up? How does that allow us to take care of communities of the earth? So those are some common values that we hold. I also want to honor that Sasana, who's one of the speakers we'll be hearing from, is a co-organizer of the group, and I saw a few other folks. So thank you to all the members of our group who have joined today.
I'm going to give a brief testimony. I thank God, first of all, for faith, because I think I would have been a terrible person if I allowed the hate that I went through as a youth. I got beat up and stabbed by DACs, damn all Chinamen. And I haven't been called a Chinaman and a lot of other things until recently because of COVID. Really, you know, I go back to China, right in the corner by my house, some guy, a carload of whites were screaming at me, you know, MF Chinaman. It's back to that again. I think these are real tough times. Out of the 50 San Franciscans that have died, 23 are Asian Americans. People don't even notice that. What my dad went through, because he came during the Chinese Exclusion Act. You know, how do we keep our faith and our integrity and our happiness and solidarity with all these other movements? You know, for me, I really find that there are no borders in God's world, and not everyone should be jailed. And every now and then people become allies in action. There was a big town hall on ABC yesterday, and they talked about it, standing up for those who are picked on because of the race and the way they look. That's our job. All over the news was the story of this waitress that decided to back up an Asian couple that was a family that was trying to have a birthday party in Carmel Valley. Look it up. There are 2,120 stories on Stop AAPI right now that you guys should all check out, and you read the stories. I mean, just in the past 3 months, 2,300 reported incidents of hate crimes, violence, and verbal assault. It's a tough time, and of course, remember who started it? Someone named President Trump. And I can't believe it. We have to do something. Our country's being torn apart, and you all know this. 2 weeks ago, I wanted to share that we had a beautiful celebration. Black Lives Matter African-American pastors joined us in Chinatown with our commemoration of Vincent Chin, 1982. Raise your hand if you remember Vincent Chin. You know the story, all right? It galvanized Chinatowns, Japantowns, Manila towns across the country to say racial justice needs to be addressed. It's institutionalized. They let the 2 baseball batters to death of Vincent Chin scot-free. They didn't have to go a day in jail. There is a perennial and long-term struggle that we're a part of. But remember this, when we did a big march and celebration in Chinatown, commemorating Vincent Chin and his mom, Reverend Jesse Jackson came to Cameron House. He came and supported us. And that solidarity at that moment, I go, wow. I went down to LA after the Korean and Black riots, just to learn from that experience. The lesson was never take action without solidarity. Don't do it alone. We have to be allies to each other. And that's why we're doing this. Some people feel like our story has not been told. There's so much that we have to add to the movement. But key importance that Reverend Deb wants me to highlight is this. After the civil rights law passed in 1964 and the civil rights movement was powerful, Martin Luther King, power to him and the building of the beloved community. The year after, Martin Luther King went to Lyndon B. Johnson to sign the Immigration Act to stop racism against Asian countries and others. And if not for that, a lot of our friends and families would not be here. Please connect the dots. Banning of Muslims. Come on, we should be there. The detentions now at the border. We were detained. We're the illegal, undocumented, my dad and others, right? I mean, there is the connection that we need to bring together. The systemic racism, xenophobia, Native Americans' land stolen. There's so much that happens and breaks down our humanity, and in the name of whatever faith or humanitarianism you have, you know, stand up. Our time has come right now to connect all the dots. Power to you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Norman Fong. My name is Susanna Yi, and I am first generation Chinese American, and it's such a privilege to be here to share a testimonial of my story, my family's story. I'd like to share with you one of the most resilient women that I know, that I knew. She was my grandmother, Popo. That's what we call her endearingly. And yes, there she is, my Popo, Wong Yik Oi. And Yik Oi actually means abundant love in Chinese. So she came to the US, I think, when she was around 50 years old. And I personally can't imagine starting life in a new country at that age, coming with little money, no English skills, not highly educated. So she came and worked as a seamstress, as a dishwasher. And the litany that was just read, just spoke exactly to my family's experience. And I would like to share a citizenship story. She was so resilient and strong-willed in taking steps towards citizenship because of her vision to bring her family to America, to bring her other children. My mom was already here. She had other grown children that she wanted to bring. And so she had this vision of a better life for them. And she studied so hard, so much so that she was wearing headphones, listening to an audio tape recording of the citizen test prep material, that she walked across the street unaware of a bus that was coming, and she was hit. And she survived that accident, along with many other bodily injuries that she survived and all the hardship and discrimination that she survived. And yet there's one incident that she didn't survive. She tried, she struggled her darndest to survive this one accident. It's not an accident, it's a tragedy, a crime. So last January, a 17-year-old young man brutally attacked her when she walked outside of her house to go for a morning walk around the park, and it was just across the street. And we live in the southeast corner of San Francisco, Visitation Valley. And when that incident happened, I was so angry and I was so heartbroken. Yet I also understood that this young man's behavior is a result of violence in our society. And so when I took the approach to understand that violence perpetuates violence, that this young man is in I'm getting a bit emotional as I talk about this incident. So regardless, this keeps happening actually in our community. The interracial tension between communities has to heal. And by sharing my story, I'm bring more supporters, bring more hearts to the matter. And I think that when we come in solidarity, like Reverend Norman Fong said, we don't do anything without being in solidarity. That helps us heal, and that helps us get over our trauma little by little. And so when we can unite our voices through compassion, then we can make real changes, because like a branch, one branch you can break, but a bundle of branches, you cannot bend that bundle. We're resilient like that when we come together. So in short, like a lotus growing out of the mud, my friends and I founded a nonprofit called Communities as One out of this tragedy to support building bridges between communities and really realize our interconnectedness as one under God. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Susanna. Before sharing the testimony from a CAA community member, maybe I can give all of you some context. CAA has been working with a small group of undocumented Chinese community members, and I want to thank them for being so brave and generous with us in sharing their stories, their life experience. Sharing personal story is never easy, in particular, your intimate and personal migration stories, given the social stigma towards undocumented immigrants in our community and the risks of exposing oneself's identity. So today, I have the honor to read one of the testimony from our undocumented community members. And as you've seen on the screen, it's in bilingual. I will be reading her story, the story of X stories of resilience in Cantonese, which is the native language of the community member, by paragraph, and you will find the English translation on the screen. 嚮往平安的生活，我2000年2月乘坐了20個小時的飛機從中國出發，幾經轉折去到一個南美洲的國家，投靠鄉下的一名遠房親戚，打算重新出發，展開人生的新一頁。飛機降落在一個陌生的國度，剎那間我還沒適應過時差來，就要去面對，四周都是灰白的天空，陌生的語言，悶熱的天氣，佈滿垃圾的街道，我開始懷疑當初出走的決定。面對住新嘅國度，生活上嘅壓迫，我當時嘅另一半認識了一些不良嘅朋友，並染上了賭博、外遇，也經常對我施暴。這些都令我生活在恐懼之中，我嘅身心都受到了極大嘅創傷。我沒有辦法忍受這樣的生活，所以最後我決定和女兒一起來到美國三藩市。來到三藩市多年後，然而我還經常夢到負責計劃生育的部門來到我們家捉我們，要求我們繳罰款了事。 在未離開中國之前，我和前夫一直躲避政府人員，被他們不斷上網恐嚇勒索，僅僅因為我們想生多一個小孩。過去在中國不允許生兩胎，生多一個都算違法。但是我嘅兒子在他小時候發生了意外，醫院開了個證明，准許我生第二胎。但是我居住的社區並沒有幫我生第二胎申請計劃，造成最後由於我意外懷孕，必須躲避社區嘅追查，也需要我媽媽嘅親人幫助我同照顧我嘅起居生活，直到我嘅兒女出世，我才決定要離開呢個傷心地。轉展之間，我和女兒嚟到了美國，我看見了藍天嘅白雲，綠樹清新，陽光明媚。咁樣嘅天氣令我唔再咳嗽，並感覺到一個重新嘅感覺。閒餘之時，我還能夠去試入大學去進修。即便如此，我仲係有好多不滿意嘅地方，例如呢度嘅槍支嘅管理好混亂，例如呢度成日發生種族歧視嘅現象，就好似比如我入去某些鋪頭，啲鋪頭嘅人員見到我係亞洲人之後，個態度就十分唔友好。對於呢樣嘢，我感到好害怕。雖然我已經重新再婚，並且同家人能夠幸福咁樣生活，但係因為而家聯邦政府嘅反移民政策同埋態度，我係冇辦法轉換到身份。我希望今後我能夠盡快轉換我嘅身份，並能夠繼續同我嘅先生開開心心咁走完下半生。Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jose, and to everyone for those testimonies. Really brave to have that sharing. We're going to shift now into a ritual that Becca will lead, and that will focus on self-care and how we can focus on some healing.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for sharing those powerful testimonies. I want to share too that I'm thinking a lot about, what is the role of healing in solidarity. It's really my prayer as a Chinese American to be in solidarity with Black communities, to be in solidarity with Indigenous communities, to be in solidarity with Latinx communities, to be in solidarity with Asian communities, to really unlearn and eradicate anti-Black racism within our colorism within our communities. And I think for me, part of where the role of healing comes in is that I've noticed being in Chinese American community that sometimes when our stories are not shared, there are barriers. There's hurt that comes up because some of us feel like we are not seen, or the violence that has happened against us is not acknowledged. So part of what I am offering are ways for us to see ourselves, to be witnessed, to be supported, and actually by the plant world. So for me, my work over the years has included being in environmental protections. And over the past 4 years, I've become a community herbalist. So I work a lot with plants. I listen to plants. I talk to plants. That's part of my spiritual tradition in this world, is being really attuned to the plant world and all of the messages they have for us. So I'm going to share about some Chinese plants that have medicine for Chinese people, for that healing, for that resilience, with the prayer, again, that in seeing ourselves and being supported, we're even better able to be here for ourselves and be here for everyone else when we talk about what is it actually going to take to end immigrant detention for everybody, for all communities. What is it going to take to end mass incarceration that has so disproportionately impacted Black community? So again, this is healing for us in the spirit of resilience. And these are Chinese herbs, and I also know we have many people on this call of many different backgrounds. So this prayer is also for you to connect with as you can. So I want to start with yarrow. Yarrow is a beautiful plant that grows many places over the world, including here in Turtle Island, North America. and China and Europe, and I think other places as well. It's long been a part of Chinese medicine. The stalks of yarrow are actually what the first like I Ching, the stalks, they were made out of yarrow stalks. There's a lot of different lore around yarrow. And one of the things that I really want to share and focus on today is its medicine around boundaries. So a lot of herbalists and plant people work with yarrow when we need help with boundaries, when we need to know where do we end and where does something else begin? And also to really reflect on protection as well. Sometimes boundaries are about protection. So for me, I wanted to call in the spirit of yarrow for protection for Chinese people, to have that sense of safety, and also to know what's ours and what's not. Racism that's directed against us is not ours, that is somebody else's. So to have that boundaries, that sense of self that allows us to thrive, knowing that that energy is not actually ours. So as part of a practice, I invite you to invite in yarrow into your life, to think about yarrow, to call on yarrow. And maybe even now in this moment, I'll say a statement and you can say it out loud, muted, or maybe just inside, to really kind of feel and take in. You might gaze upon this picture of yarrow. And I'm calling in yarrow for protection for Chinese American people, for boundaries, that we are protected and that we are safe. So that's our first plant leading the way. And then if you could go to the next slide, please. Another plant that I selected is chrysanthemum as part of our, calling in of the plants, calling in of the plant allies. You can see a little cup with some dried chrysanthemum. Many of us as Chinese people, we drink this as tea. It's very delicious. Touch a little bit on the physical properties. And I do want to say that, many of the herbs I'm talking about today are safe. And if you are going to work with them internally, you might want to work with an herbalist. There are sometimes like different conditions or medications can't interact with plants. So I'm mostly focused today on kind of the spiritual medicine and spiritual lessons of the plants. So chrysanthemum has been used medicinally for in many different ways, including to help with diabetes control and also with eye control, kind of strengthening eyesight, or even making a tea, letting it cool a little bit, and then putting a pack on your eyes to help with eye strain. So I think to me, that's what out as a lesson from chrysanthemum that we can take in as Chinese American people and as people of all different communities of what do we need to gain clarity on? What do we need to improve our eyesight on? So for me, I call in the spirit of chrysanthemum to really think about clarity and vision. And again, that vision might be, how do we heal within our own communities? That vision might be getting clarity on how we can support others, on how we can interact with people of color in this country, with the global community. What is the clarity that is needed, and how can we stand up for that? So again, I'll say a statement here, and you're welcome to repeat it afterwards or think about it. I'm calling in the spirit of chrysanthemum to help us with clear vision in how we heal and how we show up for others. So I'll repeat that. I'm calling in chrysanthemum to help us in how we heal and how we show up for others. So that's a little bit of chrysanthemum, and you can go to the next slide, please. So cinnamon is Chinese medicine. It's also global medicine. Cinnamon is beloved by many. I have a stick of cinnamon here as well. Cinnamon is another medicinal herb that's long been used in Chinese culture. Cinnamon is native to China. And I was thinking about cinnamon as it's very sweet, right? And but it's a very complex sweetness. Cinnamon has also been used to help moderate blood sugar levels, sometimes as part of a treatment regarding diabetes. So thinking about a sweetness that supports us, right? That's kind of grounded and earthy. And there was something that resonated in that for me with Chinese Americans, of like remembering the sweetness of life, and in a healthy way, right? Sweetness is such good medicine. So think, what are the ways we can add sweetness to our life? What are the ways that we can enjoy, that we can have fun as part of healing, as part of resilience, as part of solidarity? So I'll say a sentence here. I'm calling in the spirit of cinnamon to help us with the sweet things in life. I'm calling in the spirit of sin to help us sweet things in life. And we can go ahead to the next slide. We might have lost the image. Perhaps it will come back up. That's okay, because I actually have the plant right here. It is such a beautiful plant. It's gorgeous. The word for this in English, what it's often called, is mimosa blossom. This is part of the mimosa tree. And it's actually, if you happen to live in California or another place where it's growing, it's in blossom right now. I just love these blossoms. They're so vibrant. And this medicine has long been used in Chinese culture. This is a tree that's native to China, though it is growing in this part of the world quite a bit as well. The bark and the blossoms have been used to uplift people's spirits. So it's kind of it's a spirit lifting herb. So again, thinking about the many things that Chinese Americans have experienced, the racism we've endured, the oppression that we've endured, we need this. We need this to lift our spirits. And again, like, what does that allow when we lift our spirits, when we feel empowered, when we feel supported, when we feel connected? What is that good that it does for us, and how does it allow us to show up for others? So I'm calling of mimosa. Mimosa, help us remember that we are strong, we are empowered, and help us be in that truth. So calling in the spirit of mimosa to remember that we are strong and empowered, and that is our truth. That's the last plant I have to offer today. I just really wanted to share some of the things we can learn from the plants, share those prayers from the plants with us as a Chinese American community and with everybody here present on the call, really calling in the energy of those plants to help heal, to help us be seen, to hold us, again, so we can heal ourselves, so we can be present with ourselves, and so we can be present with others as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Becca. We have lost Janet for a second in the screen, but that'll come back. I'm wondering, maybe we could go to Erica's testimony. This is in relation to the current situation of those who are detained and imprisoned, especially during this pandemic of COVID. So Erica, yes, I'm going to invite you to unmute, and you can, there you go.
Hi.
Hi. And I think Hilda, our colleague in Southern California, will be translating. Hilda, Hilda, ¿quieres hacer una introducción?
Claro que sí. Sure. I am Hilda Cruz. I am the faith organizer in Southern California. And this is Erika. Erika is going to be sharing her story. Her husband is detained in Adelanto currently. And she gets to hear firsthand everything that's been happening inside. So Erika will be sharing in Spanish, and then I will translate after she's done. Erika, would you like to share, please?
Hi, mi nombre es Erika Chavez. Sorry, this little girl here. Well, yeah, my husband has, mi esposo está detenido en tiene desde febrero que está detenido y we miss him, lo extrañamos mucho y también tenemos miedo que vaya a ser infectado por el COVID-19, por todo lo que está pasando ahorita, especialmente porque no tienen cuidado, no tienen máscaras, no tienen distanciamiento social y han habido varias personas que han sido infectadas bien ahí. Y pues sí, tengo miedo que él también se vaya a infectar.
She shared that her husband has been since February. She is terrified, right, because of COVID-19 and hearing all the stories of how the overcrowdedness there and the lack of masks and sanitary sanitation in there. But I also quiero que también les cuentes lo que él está sobreviviendo, Erika. But I'm asking her to also share about what's been happening inside Adelanto as guards there are trying to accommodate, make various accommodations, but not for the welfare of those that are in there, but for those that come to inspect. So, Erika, ¿por qué no les platicas de lo que ha estado pasando con el spray? Y lo que has visto en tu escuela.
Okay. So, 2 semanas atrás, él me llamó y yo lo noté que tenía muchas rojas manchas en su cara y le pregunté por qué, pero en el momento no sabíamos que estaban echando el spray ese de sanitación. Ya fue después que me di cuenta que era por eso, que le están saliendo ronchas y también después les quitaron las tabletas y ya no lo pude mirar. Eso fue hace más o menos ya 3 semanas que no tienen tabletas, se las cancelaron y ya no lo he podido mirar por iPad.
Okay.
Y ahorita cuando él me llama, pues me comentó ayer que le dolía mucho la cabeza en las mañanas y que le sale sangre de la nariz. Y pues no podemos hacer nada.
Okay, déjame traducirle. She says that she was speaking to her husband through iPad, and this is when she first noticed that he had welts in his face, and his eyes were really irritated. They were super red. And so she asked him what was happening, and that's when he began to tell her that they were using this chemical to disinfect the facilities. And so people began to not want to be around the spraying. And so they did some hunger strikes. And then the iPads were removed about 3 weeks ago. So they're no longer able to see each other, but they still talk to them, but they're not down. And in those phone calls, she's being told that he now suffers from headaches every single day. His nose is bleeding, and he's not the only one. There's all of them with the same symptoms. ¿Algo más que les quieras decir, Erika?
Well, espero que mi testimonio traiga un poquito de ayuda, esperanza para no nada más para mi esposo, para todas las personas que están ahí adentro. Y pues que ojalá y cierren ese lugar porque es como inhumano que los tengan ahí encerrados. Aparte de estar encerrados en una prisión, en una cárcel, también los encierran por lo del COVID-19, también a veces los mantienen encerrados. Aparte de ya ser encerrados, los encierran en las celdas y no los dejan salir. También ha habido ocasiones que les quitan los teléfonos por días. Hace 2 semanas, cuando las huelgas, les quitaron el teléfono por 4 días, o no tuvimos comunicación con él, ni supimos nada de él. Estamos esperando su corte para la fianza, que es para agosto. Él ya va a tener 6 meses que está ahí detenido y pues no sabemos nada de él. O sea, qué va a pasar con su caso de él, porque él está aquí en Estados Unidos desde que tiene 12 años. So, esta es su casa, no conoce otra casa que no sea aquí en Estados Unidos.
Permíteme traducirte y después seguimos. ¿Sí? She was sharing how inhumane it is already to be locked away in such a facility, but now undergoing this whole COVID-19, they maintain constantly in lockdowns. And as soon as they begin requesting anything, their rights are being removed. For example, she says the last 2 weeks when there were some other hunger strikes, nobody was allowed to use the phone. And then she also shared that his court is coming up. It's been almost 6 months since he's been there, but he's had other court hearings that keep being postponed. And it is just unfair and unjust that as he waits for these proceedings, he's undergoing such painful experiences in there and now suffering because of this chemical being sprayed. He deserves better. He came here as a 12-year-old with his family from El Salvador. This is the only home that he's ever lived in, and she really hopes that he can stay. ¿Algo más, Erika?
Pues gracias a ustedes por escucharme y ojalá que sirva todo esto para bien.
Y estamos contigo, Erika. She's very grateful that that we are listening to her and that we're there with her right now. So she's very grateful. Gracias, Erika.
Okay, gracias.
Thank you so much, Erika. Gracias, Erika, por tu testimonio y todo esfuerzo a tu familia. We wanted to share that story about her testimony about what is happening right now in Adelanto, and which is the largest detention center west of the Mississippi. It now has about 1,000 people detained, and at least 10 people who have COVID-19. So it's already beginning to take root inside that detention facility. As well as we wanted to commemorate and recall all those who have died in California of COVID-19 while detained, while in immigration detention. And in immigration detention, in federal prisons and jails, and in state prison, which the number is now at 52. So normally we would be having a little memorial time, but in the interest of time, for all those who have died, we'll move on to the call to action with Gayla King, because the call to action is directly related to the situation.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your testimony, Erika. As you know, hearing this horrible story of a loved one that's in Adelanto, and as Reverend Deb mentioned, there's a real concern with what's happening in Adelanto, along with all the other immigrant detention centers. Many are run by private prisons. So we put a call out for faith leaders to sign on to a letter calling on Attorney General Becerra to investigate these conditions, to regulate, to inspect, to hold the private prison corporation GEO accountable, and to really investigate the deaths and the negligence that are happening. So at this time, the letter has been received by Attorney General. We invite you to go onto our website. Maybe we'll drop the link in the chat to continue to uplift the letter in your social media spaces. And we're going to be following up with the office to really ensure to lift up the voices of Erika and her loved ones and others that are inside. Many of you, and has been mentioned earlier, have been witnessing the horrors also happening in San Quentin, our state prison. That's our neighbor in Marin County. The outbreak there continues to grow. Over 1,400 folks inside have tested positive. Over 200 staff have tested positive for COVID, and there's been at least 6 deaths. That number will continue to grow if something drastic doesn't happen. For folks that were able to see, there was a press conference held there yesterday with many electeds that are really pushing on Governor Newsom at this moment to take a tour of San Quentin, to see the conditions on the inside, and calling for release, calling for mass release. We're organizing an interfaith vigil at San Quentin on July 19th so that we can show the faith community is standing with folks that are impacted by this. And we welcome you to join us either virtually. We'll be live streaming on Facebook. We're also looking for faith leaders and others to join us on site. And there's a link to RSVP if you're able to join us in person. Otherwise, please share our link for others to view this. There will be a call to action reaching out to the governor that will accompany this vigil. I also want to lift up that we're working with a congregation that has been able to house someone who was released from San Quentin who is COVID positive and provide them with a space for isolation and for healing. And we're looking for other congregations who may have space, who are not using space during shelter in place, that would be open to doing this. Because it's another way that the faith community can show their support. So contact me if you think your congregation could provide a space for self-isolation.
Now, as we all know, the Trump administration has leveraged immigration as, his re-election political agenda, and we have seen a constant change in terms of immigration policy and laws and attacks on immigrants of color. With the most recent one, it's the proposal to limit asylum protection in the United States. So you can find more information. I drop a link here, a press statement that we issue condemning the change. And also, if you can, please submit your public comment by the mid of this month, 15th of July. And I would also drop a link that's standard, template created by Catholic Legal Immigration Network. So yeah, I will drop a link here in the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jose. I want to thank everyone for coming today, for all the speakers, for all the prayers, for all the opportunities for learning, for feeling, and for feeling solidarity. We're going to end our closing song today for the vigil is also about healing, because music is about healing. Music and dancing is about healing. So you're invited to get up and dance if you'd like. As I mentioned, Reverend Norman Fong is also part of a musical legend group called Just Jammin', which has been playing soul music for the community, I don't know, for 40 years, maybe? 52. Norman, 52 years. Okay, Norman, maybe you'd like to say a word of introduction about Just Jammin'. We picked a song that we thought people could enjoy just to feel the spirit of resilience.
Okay. Thank you, Deborah, for choosing whatever you chose. But the main thing is we were all born to sing, all of us, from whatever language you want. And you got to let nothing stifle the song in you. Do justice, love, compassion. Amen.
Yeah. Thank you. So we're going to try to play this song with sound. Hopefully it'll work.
Why don't you stop and look me over? Am I the same girl you used to know? Why don't you stop and look me over? Am I the same girl who you first saw? I want you all, I want you need, I want you love, and I want you next to me. Every day we would love and slip away, but we were much too young to love exactly this way. I'm the same girl, yes I am, yes I am. I'm the same girl, yes I am, yes I am.
Well, we want to send you off all with blessings and thank you for participating. If you have any comments that you'd like to share in the chat, we'd love to hear what you thought about today's vigil. And we invite you to come back next month, the second Friday of the month, which will be led by a different community, and as we'll continue to do this walk together. And hope to see some of you at the San Quentin Interfaith Vigil, on either online or in person.